Right. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. So today is our fifth session, our fifth monthly webinar or online session, I guess, under Breath at Work. So as many of you would know, Veronique and I, are very committed, very passionate about breath work. And one of the things we are trying to do is to bring breath work in to different areas of society, I guess. And corporate is one of the ones we are trying to work on bringing breath work also into the corporate environment. But today is Saturday. So today is a mix of people that might be in the corporate world, might not be. And we want this knowledge about breathwork to just sort of spread and to spread to whoever is interested, to whoever wants it, needs it. So we might talk at one point about sort of the applications for people who are working, but of course the applications really extend beyond that. Hello, Christine. We are going to talk about something which a topic that we love, which is breath holds, breath retention. So we're going to be talking about the space really. We're going to be focusing really today on the space that sort of lies between the inhales and between inhale, exhale, and between exhale and inhale. It's often overlooked in a lot of breathwork practices. We often talk about, the inhaling oxygen, carbon dioxide release, but we often forget that there is a little pause in between these two movements. And we want to sort of dive into that today. There's a lot more we could say, of course, than we can cover in 45 minutes, but we want to sort of just give you a sense of what's there, what's in these two spaces, what's possible, and what they're for, how can we use them. So we're going to start with just a breath awareness. That's how we're going to kick off today, and then after that, we'll do a bit of breath awareness to come in touch with our own natural pauses in our breath without trying to change it. Then Veronique will sort of take over there and give us a little bit of the theory around breath hold, breath retentions, and give us a bit of what the science is telling us about that. And then we'll go into a breathwork practice where we will take control of our breath and we will deliberately pause at certain moments in our breath and we'll sort of observe what goes on when we pause at the top of the inhale, at the bottom of the exhale, and when we pause in both. And sort of we'll play around, experiment with that and see what your experience is. So without further ado, if you're ready, we are going to start with a little practice of breath awareness where we're going to sort of connect into our natural breath. So my invitation before we get started is to get comfortable. So it looks like you're all sitting in chairs. So just, take a few seconds just to maybe put your feet down if that feels comfortable, or if you like to sort of cross up your legs on your chair or whatever you're sitting on, do that. Make sure that you feel the sort of the chair beneath you holding you up. So just let the weight of your body sink into your chair. And you can hold yourself up straight, but you can also lean back a little bit in a chair against the back of the chair if you've got one, or the cushion or the pillow, just to kind of take off a bit of tension, right? Because we really want to be relaxed. And I'm going to invite you now to two things. You can either close your eyes if that feels comfortable and safe. And if you don't wish to close your eyes, that's fine. You can also just sort of lower your gaze and maybe just take your eyes off the screen and just soften the gaze as you look down, just to come into yourself. And I'm going to invite you to connect in with your breath. So let's come into presence first. And very gently, I'm going to invite you to bring awareness to your breath. No need to change it. No need to control it. Just observe it. And just find it to start with. Maybe just find your breath. And that might be at your nose where you feel it coming in, or it could be just you're feeling the movement of the breath in your body as it's rising and falling on the inhale and the exhale. So just finding that breath, that natural breath of yours. And maybe notice where the breath enters the body, and that might be the nostrils. It could be also through a little opening of the mouth. Whichever one you're using right now, don't change it. And just feel the air coming in. And see if you can feel the air traveling down the back of your throat, sort of into your chest, into your lungs. See if you can just follow the path of breath. Just very gently sense the journey of each inhale and each exhale. Just following those two movements as they're happening very naturally. Again, I know there's always an urge to control it when we sense it and connect with it, but try to not give in to that urge. Try to take a back seat and just observe it. And you might notice as well the movement in your body. That's often something that's quite easy to sense. Is this sort of the rising, usually the rising on the inhale, and the sort of dropping in on the exhale, the releasing on the exhale. So see if you can feel the two movements and the physical changes that happen in your body when you inhale and when you exhale. And once you've captured those two movements, I'm going to invite you to bring your awareness to the subtle pauses that are happening. Now, the pauses could be at the top of an inhale, they could be at the bottom of an exhale, or they could be two pauses. There's no right, no wrong here, just observing where does my breath pause when I let it just flow in and out? Or does it not pause at all? That's another option. Is that your breath is moving from one inhale to the next exhale, then back into an inhale, and it's almost like all of it is connected. So just notice where the pauses are, if any. And as you bring your awareness to these pauses, just notice how long the pause or the pauses are, or how short that they are. Maybe they're barely there, they're barely perceptible. There is a pause, but it's like it's such a short pause. You'd almost never notice it if you hadn't put your attention on it. Just notice the length of the pauses. And if there are two pauses in your breath at the top of the inhale and at the bottom of the exhale, are the lengths of the pauses the same? Or is there a significant difference between the pauses? And now that you've noticed where the pauses are for you, can you sense whether there is ease and stillness in the pauses when you are in them? So try to observe the experience of the pause, the natural pause. What actually is going on in that little pause, which again might be really short or not. Maybe it's long, or maybe it's even getting longer as we're going into this practice. You're maybe sensing that the pauses are very slightly extending, naturally extending, or maybe not. So is there a sense of ease, a sense of stillness in them? Or maybe there's an urge in the pause, and you can sense it today, is that there is an urge, a pull to move into the next inhale, exhale, like almost like you're running away from the pause, like something inside you is not really sitting in that pause, not really settling. It's sort of rushing to get to the next movement. So can you sense that? How comfortable am I with the pause or the pauses? Is there, in those pauses, is there excitement or discomfort, resistance or curiosity or anything else? What lies in them? And see if you can allow yourself to be really fully present in the pause. Without again changing the pauses, not this point. Can you rest? Find a bit of stillness in the pause, in that space that is naturally there, without rushing or running away from it. Can you bring a sense of appreciation to that pause? And can you wait and witness what arises once the pause is over? It's almost like you're slowing down. It's like a slow motion movie where without touching the pause, really, you're just sort of slowing down your attention and putting all your awareness on that little space. And again, notice whether you feel even a slight struggle or maybe it's a soft surrender there as you're going through various cycles of it now and you're deepening and deepening your awareness. Is it getting easier or is the struggle getting stronger? And there's no right or wrong, it's just information. Just becoming aware of what is. Let's stay there for another 30 seconds. Just breathing, pausing if it's coming naturally, then breathing, and then observing. And then after a few more cycles, gently bring your awareness back to your whole body, sitting on this chair. Just feel the space around you again. Just maybe ask yourself, what did I learn here? What did I observe for myself? And when you feel ready, you can gently bring your awareness back into the Zoom room. Flutter your eyelids, your eyelashes. Gently come back into our space.
Thank you, Selena.
Sorry.
Just so nice, so relaxing just to watch the breath, isn't it? So simple. And actually, breath work is very simple. And there are different ways in which we can look at breath work and at our breath. We can look at breath work or breathing from a mechanical perspective, so looking at how the diaphragm contracts and releases and the muscles that are engaged. We can look at breath work from more like a neurophysiological perspective. What's the link with the nervous system and how we feel when we breathe this way or that way? And we can also look at breath work more from a biochemistry perspective. And that's what we're going to do today. And it's very simple. Basically, from biochemistry point of view, breath work is a gas exchange. Yeah. We take in oxygen, we release carbon dioxide. That's the main gas exchange. And for many years, we thought that the focus should be taking more oxygen. But personally, I find that one of the main discovery of the past 20 or 30 years in breathwork is that carbon dioxide is not just a waste product. And what happens when we take in oxygen, the oxygen goes to the lungs, it goes into the air sacs, the air bags, alveoli, goes into the bloodstream, and then it arrives at the cells in the body. And we need the oxygen together with glucose to create energy for the cell to function. Yeah, that's the ATP. But in order for the oxygen to get into the cells, we need to have carbon dioxide. So we cannot produce energy for our cells with oxygen alone. We need to have carbon dioxide, otherwise the cells won't function, they will die. So CO2, carbon dioxide, is not just a waste product. We need it. We need it. And the way to build your carbon dioxide is to hold your breath. That's one of the main results of breath retention, is to build up the level of CO2 that will allow for the oxygenation in the body. So that's the basic of breath work. We breathe in oxygen, we use carbon dioxide to deliver the oxygen into the cells, and then we release the extra CO2. Now, there are two different types of, well, actually three, breath retentions. And I'm going to share my screen. So, let me know if you can see it. Yeah.
We're seeing it, but it's, yeah, there we know. I'm in slide mode. Yeah.
Okay. So you can have a breath retention, which is called inner retention, which is after the inhale. So you inhale and you pause. I prefer to say pause rather than to hold, because it's less aggressive. So you inhale and pause. Your oxygen level is quite high because you've taken lots of oxygen. And because you pause, you rise, the level of CO2 rises in your body, which has for an effect to boost the oxygen delivery in your body. Yeah. The difference between the pause after the inhale and the pause after the exhale is that your oxygen level is low. So you exhale, there's less oxygen, there's more carbon dioxide, and in general, that leads to more calming effect. Yeah. But these are the rules in general. Obviously, the way you feel, your fitness level, everything will have an impact on how you feel after the inner retention or the outer retention. Does it make sense? So the difference between this breath retention is only the level of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And that's what we are changing, basically. More oxygen for the inner retention. CO2 is rising a bit more slowly, but that gives energy. When you exhale fully and then hold, level of oxygen is lower. The level of CO2 will rise actually faster, but this has a calming effect if you practice regularly and if you don't push too hard. Otherwise, that might create more anxiety. But as I said, it's important to notice that it depends on how you feel at the start. What's your baseline? If you're never used to doing breath retention, then you might feel a bit anxious as well.
Can I ask Veronique, maybe at this point, just to ask maybe the group, we didn't get a chance to ask them really what they actually experienced, what the natural breath holds were. Would it be interesting now or later to sort of ask them what they experienced?
I think we'll do it afterwards when we do the control pause.
Yeah, just to know where the natural ones were, not the controlled ones.
Yeah. So if you want to put it in the chat box, maybe.
Maybe just a question around what did you experience when we did the breath awareness? Did you experience any natural pauses at the top or the bottom? And maybe in a few words, what was the experience like of these pauses? Did they come naturally, or did they sort of feel a little bit unpleasant, maybe even feeling a bit not really wanting to stay there? Like, what was in a few words?
I generally, Celine, I always feel I do better with a slower breath and also exhalation is better for me than the inhalation. I definitely can agree with Veronique showed on the slide now there. I tend to get more stressed or worked up with taking the breath in more. And so pausing at the top of the inhalation for me is less relaxing, definitely, compared to I can pause quite well on after the exhalation, and that comes naturally. And I feel like I can do that longer. The inhalation one, I would actively have to practice, and I tend to not pause that long. So that would be my experience here.
Yeah.
And that really depends what your natural baseline is. So if you are more into an energized state, if you are more into a sympathetic mode, then, that will influence how the pause after the inhale feels, if it's too much then. And this is one thing that I definitely noticed over the years, especially with yoga, where we practice a lot relaxing. People tend to be very comfortable with relaxing parasympathetic mode, slow exhale, holding the pause after the exhale. And then whenever we do something energizing, then there is a little shock. But that is the aim of breath work, is to become more familiar, relax into whatever mode we are in, energizing, relaxing, inner retention, outer retention. We practice them all so the body can relax into all of them. I'll just...
It looks from the chat that most people really definitely picked up that they had a natural pause at the bottom of the exhale, which, by the way, is a natural breath. A natural breath should be really... Natural breathing is inhale, exhale, and a little pause at the bottom. That's normally, not saying that has to be the case all the time, but that sort of triangle, inhale, then exhale, then a pause is really the natural shape of our breath normally. Yeah.
And so this is the main difference between the inner retention and outer retention. And we practice that in different disciplines. So you might have heard of practices with retention, like, I'm going to share my screen again. So if you are a free diver, anybody is a free diver? Then you practice holding your breath after the inhale, because you want to improve oxygen delivery. And by the way, we recommended a book about breath work called Breath by James Nestor, which is fantastic. He has another book called Deep about freediving. I only read the free sample on my Kindle, and I thought it's so fascinating that if I read the book, I'm going to start freediving, and I don't have the time. I've got too many things on, so I have to wait until I'm ready to do it, because it sounds fascinating. And he mentions in particular a reflex that is called the amphibian reflex. So when a human, especially a baby, goes into water, underwater, there is an amphibian reflex. That means we go into breath retention. It's a natural reflex in babies that we have to cultivate to keep it when we do it in freediving. But if you're interested in freediving, I think the book by James Nestor, Deep, is a good thing to look at. But I haven't read the whole, so I can't say. But freedivers practice holding the breath after the inhale. In yoga, the word retention in Sanskrit is kumbhaka, and kumbhaka means a bowl. So the bowl can be full, that's anta kumbhaka, or it can be empty, vaya kumbhaka. So inner retention or outer retention. But there is also, according to yoga, a third retention that happens naturally when you are completely relaxed in meditation, or if you do practices like CCB, you might have experienced that suddenly you don't need to breathe. You are relaxed, you don't need to breathe, and that's a natural retention. That's the elixir of youth. And according to yogis, we only have a certain number of breath for our whole life. So we can either breathe very fast, not hold the breath, and we live less long, or if we slow down the breath, if we learn to extend and relax into the breath retention, then we live longer. So breath retention is a key part of yoga and of pranayama. And you can also practice breath retention for fitness and health. So the third image is, I don't know if you've ever seen these masks. They are called high altitude or altitude simulation masks, although they don't actually simulate altitude simulation, but they make it harder for you to breathe, which is a way to practice your fitness or, you know, your breath intelligence in a way. But for health and fitness, you practice holding your breath at the end of the exhale. So it's more often outer retention. And we probably practice afterwards with Celine some of these techniques. But I'd like to do a little test with you. And we're going to measure how relaxed you are when you pause after the exhale. So if you've done breathwork classes with me before, I usually refer to this test as the BOLT score. But there's also another name for it. We call it also the control pose from the one school of breathwork, Buteyko breathwork. And this only shows how relaxed you are holding your breath, how comfortable you are when the level of CO2 rises. So you need to just relax, breathe in, breathe out, and you can hold your nose or you can pause your breath and then start counting in seconds how long before you feel a strong urge to breathe in. So I know it's subjective, but you want to wait until you feel, now it would be nice to breathe. And when you breathe, within 2 breaths, you are back to a normal breathing. So you don't go until you are out of breath. It's not the end. Does it make sense? Yeah? So let's do that. Just take 1 or 2 just comfortable breaths. And at the end of the next exhale, pause and count. 1, 2. Then you might feel a little bit in your tummy, the urge to breathe. That's when you stop counting. And then when you've got your number, you can maybe write it in the chat. Right. 10, 14, 7. So we sometimes, we count faster or slow, but it's good. 30 for Christine. 14. So the ideal way to use this score is to use it regularly to see how you progress when you do breath work. Yeah. Then on average, people can pause between 10 and 15. That's the average. Yeah. What we aim for is 20. Over 20 gets into really high fitness. So Hélène, you're doing a lot of breath work, so it shows. Christine, you're doing a lot of fitness and it shows. Athletes at the athletic level, they would go for 40, 45. Yeah. Now, if you've got less than 5, then usually it's when you've got a serious respiratory issue, or you've got a cold, you've got an infection, you've got asthma. 5 to 10, there is room for improvement. Even 5 to 15, you should really try to work on your breath holds. And one easy way is to do just what we've done. You inhale, you exhale, and you pause. And you can do it while sitting, or little by little, you do it also while moving. So going for a walk, inhale, exhale, pause, and keep walking and repeat and measure it regularly. And little by little, it will improve. And when it improves, you will feel basically that you feel better because the oxygen is delivered more easily into your body. Yeah. So check, especially if you're under 15, try to incorporate that into your practice to improve your respiratory system. Does it make sense? Any question, or shall we go straight into the practice? Maybe Céline can bring in a practice where we put that and observe that a bit more.
So if no questions, maybe we'll make these questions at the end. We're going to move into practice. I'm just curious because again, I feel like we didn't really process the first experience, but what was your experience with your natural pauses? Did anybody notice something? Did you notice it was really comfortable? You enjoyed it? Or was it more like, could feel how I was sort of, my breath tends to rush into the next part, whether it's an inhale and exhale. Was there any observations at all or an awareness that you gained on your own natural breath? Aside from noticing where the pauses were. Paul, was that you? Yeah. What did you notice?
I noticed that there was a natural pause after the exhale. Yeah.
And was it when you paused and watched that, did you feel like, oh, that feels like was it came with ease? Was it comfortable? Was it a little bit like, don't know what to make of it?
Because I would imagine you're kind of starved of oxygen when you've just exhaled, but it's actually more comfortable than I was aware.
Yeah, interesting. And we're actually never starved of oxygen, by the way. That is also something I think we think that when we exhale, we're starved of oxygen. Our cells are always sort of saturated at 98% in oxygen. So there is also always oxygen circulating in the body. But it's interesting because I think we do have this feeling that when the air will leave us, then there's nothing left. But it's maybe more comfortable. Did anybody notice anything else about that natural pause, which seems for most of you was at the bottom of the exhale? Christine? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I always love actually that pause because to me it feels like it's the stillness that you can or I can sense in my body, some kind of movement I wouldn't have noticed before, like the pulse, or that there's something that I can't describe it really well, but that the body is kind of doing its subtle little movements and activities you don't notice otherwise when you keep breathing regularly. And I always love that feeling. It's hard to describe, but it is a stillness with a subtle movement that's very pleasant, I find.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to explore this further now because we're going to go into practice and we're going to do there's going to be several movements to this practice, right? We're going to explore the both pauses, but controlled pauses. So as you've understood so far, there is a natural pause that normally occurs for most of us, and it's very often at the bottom of the exhale. That's a natural one. There is then, as Veronique has beautifully explained to us, there are controlled pauses, right? And for different reasons, we can do it because we want to improve our sports performance or our ability to hold our breath. We can do it because we want um, to increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide. We can do it because we want to free dive. So there's very different applications. Some people really do it with a specific purpose. We're going to look at it now as also like for general well-being. Like, what do these pauses do when you accentuate them? So we're going to do 4 movements in this practice. We're going to start with we're going to do 2 triangle breaths. One where we're going to pause at the very beginning at the bottom, which is a normal one, but we're going to really start pausing there, controlling that pause. Then we're going to move the triangle upside down and we're going to do a pause at the top. Notice what that's like. Is that any different? Then we will move into what we call square breaths or box breaths, where we'll pause at the top and the bottom. And notice what that does. And then we will go for free flow, sort of 4-sided breaths, but we're not going to control the lengths at which we hold. Okay. So we're going to move between the 4 movements. And we're going to, after we've done each movement, we are going to pause, let go of the pattern to just observe what goes on for us. Okay. So open your awareness, not just when you're doing the breathing, but also when I say to you, just let go of the breathing pattern and just let it all go back to normal. Just observe how your general state, your physical state, your emotional state, your state of being in that moment when you let it go. Okay, because what's important is that when you walk away from this session, you notice which of these really felt best for you, felt really, felt like your go-to. Okay. So again, we're going to work with breath retention. And I'm going to reiterate what Veronique said was really important is this is not an effortful hold, right? We're not clenching, we're not squeezing, we're not tightening. That would stress our bodies. So it's a gentle pause. And I haven't found a better image than imagining, you know, when you just lie in the ocean and you let your body float and you let the water float to your body. I'm a very good example to say that because my legs tend to sink, but I've seen many people do it. And if you try to move your arms to stay afloat, that's effortful. But if you just let go of your body on this salted water and just really release, then your body just floats. It holds and it floats. So I want you to have that image of just that relaxed pausing. So with that, let's just get comfortable again in our chair. So sit back in the chair you're in. If you've got something behind you, just lean back a little bit without fully falling asleep or releasing all sort of everything, but just let the chair support you. And we're going to begin by aligning, as I mentioned, with the natural resting rhythm. So we're going to inhale, exhale, and we're going to pause at the bottom of our exhales. So very, very, very subtly, just start moving into this breathing pattern. Imagine a triangle where you're letting your breath, you're inhaling quite naturally. Doesn't matter how long, just inhale as long as you feel is right. Then, as soon as you get to the top of the inhale, just release the breath into an exhale. And then pause at the bottom of the exhale. And again, I'm not going to give you counts. I just want you to pause at the bottom of that exhale. So just pause, no holding, no tensing, no clenching, just pause. See if you can soften and melt into that pause. And when you feel the slightest urge and call to breathe in again, you breathe back in. Go to the top of that inhale as far as it feels comfortable. And then you release it again through an exhale. And again, when you get to the bottom of the exhale and you feel there's no more air, then you pause again and you stay there. So spend the next 2 minutes just breathing like this, inhaling, exhaling, and pausing, getting comfortable into that pause, really extending it if it feels like it can be extended, but not extending it to meet any record or to stress the system, just as long as it's comfortable and comes with ease. And repeat the cycle, focusing on nothing else but that pattern. Inhale, and then release when you're ready through the exhale. And then pause. Softening all the muscles in your face when you're pausing, softening all the muscles in your body, your neck, your shoulders. And keep going. Let's do 5 more rounds. And maybe those pauses are going to get longer and longer, or maybe not. Just have the experience of finding ease and comfort into that pause at the bottom of the exhale. Maybe you've got 2 more rounds to go. Once you get to the bottom and you've done the 5, just keep your eyes closed, your gaze down, and just let go of the breathing pattern. Just take just over a minute to notice what it feels like after having breathed in this way, pausing at the bottom. To let your breath do what it wants to do again, release all control of the breath. And notice how you feel. Has this changed your state? The state of mind, the state of your physical body, your mental, physical, emotional state? Just notice if it has had any effect on you. And now we're going to pick up the opposite triangle. So this time we are going to get back in the driver's seat of our breath. We're going to inhale as far as we want, and then we're going to pause at the top of the inhale for as long as feels comfortable. And when we feel the urge to release with the exhale, then we release. And again, we're going to do this for 2 minutes. Inhale. Pause at the top of the inhale. Surrender and soften into that pause. And then when you feel ready, release. But stay as long as you want, as long as you can, without pushing, without causing any stress to your physical body. Ease into the fullness of this pause at the top of your inhale. It can be quite a different pause where you're expanding and then you're pausing within this expansive state before releasing. Just keep going, inhaling, pausing, and then releasing. And allow yourself to feel nourished and alive in this pause. Let's do 5 more of this one. Inhale, all the way to the top of your breath. Then pause. And then when you need, exhale and release. Let's do a couple more. Pause. And release when you need to. And at the bottom of the next exhale, just release it again. Release the breathing pattern. Let your breath return to normal. As it's returning to normal, just bring your awareness to how you feel now. Has this experience of pausing at the top of your inhale changed? Is it any different or similar to the experience of holding your breath at the bottom of your exhale? Just notice. Maybe one felt easier than the other. Maybe one was more comfortable than the other. Maybe you noticed you had a preference for one over the other. Or maybe they were absolutely similar. You just can't really see a difference between both. Just ask yourself, what am I noticing? And once more, we're going to get into the driver's seat of our breath. And we're going to move into a square breath or box breath, as it's commonly called. For this one, we're going to breathe in for a count of 3. So we're going to use counts for this one. We're going to breathe in for 3. We will hold at the top for a count of 3. We will release for 3 and then hold at the bottom for 3. And after 5 repetitions, we'll extend it to a count of 4. If you feel comfortable to do 4, you do 4. If you think that 4 is too much, you stick with 3. Okay? So let's take a deep inhale in for 3. So inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Inhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3. Inhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3. Let's do one more with the count of 3. Inhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3. Let's bring it up to 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 3 more. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and then pause, 2, 3, 4, and then gently release that pattern. And again, let your breath return to its natural rhythm. It will take a few breaths to return and stabilize. And as the breath is returning to a natural flow and rhythm, notice how you feel. Notice what's present or not. Where does this experience take you? The box breath, the square breath. And as you think back at the 3 practices you've done, to think about the differences, similarities that you felt. Is there one practice that stands out for you? One that felt it was giving you what you most needed in this moment? Maybe there was one that didn't feel very comfortable, that actually didn't feel very right. Almost came as a bit uncomfortable. Where were the subtle differences or similarities? Once you've gathered what you need to gather from this experience, this breathwork experience, and gently sort of just feel the space, the ground underneath you, under your feet, the chair that's holding you up. Coming back in this present moment. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes again so that we can sort of open up the mics and maybe share a little bit about your experience. And I will leave you to take away, and I'll put it in follow-up email, the experience of actually just letting you go with as long exhales and inhales as you like, holds as you like. I didn't do the forced one, but I'll put it in an email and you can experiment with that at home. Can we maybe have a few, I don't know if anybody has any experience they'd like to share of what they noticed as we're doing these 3 practices, triangle, triangle upside down, and the square breath. Yeah, Veronique.
I really noticed the difference between the first and the second triangle.
Mm.
The second triangle, I really feel the energy boost of pausing at the end of the inhale, but strongly.
Wow.
And that was the one that for me today was, I felt that's the one that I needed. I needed this little boost instead of a coffee, maybe because I haven't had a coffee yet.
Nice.
But
Nice.
it really gave me a little bit of a oops. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Jacqueline, I don't know, you're unmuted. I don't know if did you want to say?
I had the same with the second. At first, I noticed that I was holding my breath instead of pausing.
Yeah.
Then I regained my consciousness, and also that my shoulders were quite tight and started to relax. And then I actually, as I continued, I felt the space in my head get more space. Sometimes it felt like, as of in the last exercise, I felt more space in my legs. It was really strange. Yeah.
Was there a preference? Did you feel like there was one that you're like, oh, that one, that was a sweet spot? That one,
I thought the
or not?
second one was the hardest, but it felt good at the end. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Did anybody else witness or experience something similar or different? Paul?
Yeah, I was surprised because I feel like it's more natural to hold your breath in than it is to hold your breath out. And I actually found it uncomfortable this time to to pause at the top. Maybe it's because just before this session I'd been swimming and then cycling back like crazy to get back in time. So my body wants to come down to relax. And but I found it like to hold your breath in, it requires more kind of muscles, like more effort to do that than to hold it out, which I found surprising and interesting.
Yeah, the inhale is connected with more tension in a way, naturally, more muscular activity. But I think as well, because if you were swimming and cycling before, then as you said, your body was into like, let's relax a bit more.
Yeah, break now. Yeah, don't make me even more. Yeah.
It's a beautiful analogy we sometimes do in breathwork, where we talk about the bottom of the exhale, the pause at the bottom is a bit like dying. It's a little dying. It's a little experience of dying every time, because it's like a last breath out. So there's a little surrender of like, this is it. Life has and life hasn't left us, but it's like this is a stillness that, when we take our last exhale in life, that's where we'll be. And then we say, the inhale is a bit like a little rebirth. I mean, the first thing we did again was our little lungs popped open when we were born. So there's a little bit of a sense of, aliveness, rebirth every time we, do this effort, fill up again, and this oxygen's being released everywhere. And obviously, this is more like these are sort of more not the scientific explanations, but there's something quite beautiful in that, which people get when they do the CCBs and more profound breathing. As Veronique was saying, we do these experiences where we don't have a need to breathe anymore. And people often say that feels like dying. That feels like, not life not being there anymore. So just something to observe as well. An experience. Any other experiences? Any other sort of?
Yes, I felt after the one and the breath out, very, very calm, quiet, very quiet. And then when it was going in, that was right, I've got to hold it. And it just reminds me of all the times, when you see an email coming in, and they do say that emails are one of the most stressful things, and you sort of hold your breath, and the phone goes, oh gosh, it's this. Yes, it just reminds me of all those times where you do hold it and you think that it's easy, but in actual fact, it's not.
Georgina, there is actually a term for this reaction. It's called email or screen apnea. When at work in particular, when you've got an email, when you've got, something stressful and you hold your breath. But this is the difference between, unconsciously holding your breath, like stressed reaction, and consciously pausing and easing into the pause. But yeah, definitely at work, it's very often, looking at the screen and feeling the tension it's apnea rather than letting go.
And maybe that's something to observe in the next few weeks is until we meet again, is observe when you are doing these breath holds, but they're not obviously controlled, intentional breath holds. They're actually stress. It's like I'm writing this email and my shoulders are going up and I'm almost not breathing, or my phone rings and I'm like, oh no, not this person. I don't want to have this call now. Because observe it, because of course it's having an effect on your physiology and the oxygen being delivered to your brain. And whereby, of course, in these moments, we should just say, oh God, I should breathe deeply here. I need to get through this. We're breath holding, but this is not, as you're saying, Veronique, this isn't like productive, efficient breath holding. This is stress breath holding. It's stopping the flow of breath, the flow of life force really moving through us. So it's very different from practicing it intentionally because we're building up a tolerance or better breathing habits.
And I'd like to share one more screen if we've got just 1 second. This, because I really like this, how to use the breath retention in your daily life at work, just before replying to an email, before a presentation, or at the end of the day. A square box is beautiful. And think of breath retention a little bit like Jacqueline or Christine, you said as well, as the moment between stimulus and response, like a pause, the place where wise action begins. And that's something I find quite nice to do, is pause in stillness and be wise. I think it's a nice way to include the breath retention in your work life, is let's take a moment to be wise. And that's something that we can practice as well.
And in terms of takeaways, therefore, I mean, the practices we are sort of going to leave with you, and we'll put them in the follow-up email, are to play around with the triangle breath. You can just pick one. If there's one in particular that you discovered today and you're like, yeah, I'd like to do that, then, it's as little as a minute a day is great. If you can build up a practice up to sort of 15 minutes, fantastic. You'll definitely have, you'll get lots more benefits the more you practice it. But, if it's just like, I'm going to remind myself once a week or 3 times a week to do 3 minutes, that's great. And I think what was Veronique was about, it's not about the counts. It's not about the technique. It's about also being really interested in like, what's going on when I do this conscious practice? What is it doing for me? What is it bringing me? Does it bring me the calm I need? Does it energize me the way Veronique said I need? The others of triangle energize me. So, practice, explore, observe, maybe with a specific focus on these breath pauses. Again, I know we've been interchangeably saying holds and pauses, and we're intentionally sort of moving away from the word hold because we really don't want people to feel like they're holding and clenching the breath. And let us know next month. Let us know how, what did you discover through this practice. And don't forget that it can be the triangles, it can be the box breathing. Box breathing is the famous popularized breathwork technique. It's used by Navy SEALs and people who work in sort of really elite professions that need a lot of concentration. So they use this to stabilize and stabilize their minds. So it has been recognized over the decades and the years that this is a very, very, very powerful technique. And then, as I said to you, we didn't get around to it, but just explore even having your own four-sided breath, where you just let yourself see how long those sides are, how long is the hold at top and the bottom when you just let it be without controlling it with counts. That's another little nice, interesting experience to have. And with that, Veronique, is there anything you want to add to close off our session today?
No, I think that's all. Just keep playing with your breath, exploring, noticing. You know, you are the source of all your knowledge. You already have the knowledge in it, as long as you observe, and have fun with your breath. And that's it. And see
Thank
you
you
next
very
month.
much. See you next month, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a lovely weekend,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Bye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
all.
Veronique. Celine.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Switch off the recording.
Yep.